What follows is what I believe to be the most logical and thematically satisfying end to Clara Oswald's story. It was formulated via the research of multiple sources. A brief background on myself. My name is Dan Harrison King. I'm a novelist, artist, musician and occasional filmmaker. I've been writing my whole life in some capacity or another. I wrote and bound my own books with tape, granted, when I was a child. I started script and screenplay writing in my early teens. Now 33 years old, I've written many stories and published as of writing this, one novel and one novelette. As a point of interest during my teens and early script writing days, I did write a Doctor Who movie screenplay. It will never see the light of day. In my writing, I always strive for logic and competency whilst also trying to be thought-provoking, symbolic and entertaining. I formulated this story, writing over a week or so, and took a further month to write and flesh out to rectify plot holes of the Moffat, Coleman, Capaldi years, and hopefully tie everything up in a nice bow of satisfaction. Speaking of points of interest in this upcoming fanfic or theory, whatever you want to call it, when I want to give some out of story, behind the scenes context, points of reference, I will pop up here and explain. Obviously, spoilers ahead. Before we continue into the main bulk, we have some major pointers right off the bat. We will be selective in the use of deleted script elements and deleted film scenes as evidence for canon. For example, the Doctor gave a speech to Rigsy right after Clara's death. It was written in the script, but as far as we can tell, no filmed deleted scene of it exists. Maybe the crew were on the same wavelength as me and realised the impracticality of it on a logical level. Rigsy's explanation to Clara's family for her death and the logistics of taking her body out to give back to them would have been a ludicrous undertaking for him to be involved in, especially without the Doctor's influence or presence. We will get into this as the story progresses. There does exist a deleted scene of Rigsy returning home to his fiancée Jem and immediately breaking down with grief. This is canonical in my story and hopefully will fit in seamlessly with it. The events of the episodes Face the Raven, Heaven Sent and Hellbent happened exactly as depicted. Clara Oswald did die on Trap Street in 2015. Orson Pink, the first human time traveller from the episode Listen, is a descendant of Clara and Danny. Yes, the events of the episode did happen and were not made null and void by either of their deaths. Clara's telepathic link with the Tardis was accurate, and the Tardis did know when Clara was going to die. It was also precise in knowing that Orson Pink was from about 100 years in Clara's future, as the Doctor explained in Listen. Also, it is to be noted that young Rupert Pink, who is, in case you were unaware, Danny Pink, has no known family, hence is living in an orphanage. In Listen, Danny mentions that the date that they are on can finally happen after family stuff got in the way previously. However, this could be a lie on Danny's part, maybe due to nerves, or his extended family, which he has since got in contact with later on in his adult years. After all, if he did have a close family his whole life, why would he be living in an orphanage during his younger years as Rupert? Much like Clara's death is a fixed point in the Doctor Who universe, Orson Pink's existence, or at the very least the first human time traveller, is also a fixed point. If a fixed point event is determined by having a butterfly effect of causality emanating from its existence, then we can't say that Pink's existence and his actions are in flux. Otherwise, we could say Clara's death is also in flux, and she could have been truly saved and a heartbeat would have returned after leaving Gallifrey. Much like how people knew of Clara's death in the Trap Street / her death in absentia and went out to live their lives in the continuing universe, I'm sure many people were aware of and were summarily affected by the first instance of documented time travel with Orson at the helm. Even if this wasn't the case, Orson Pink's existence and story are part of the Doctor's and Clara's. Causality, the butterfly effect, and chaos theory. Would Clara have even died on Trap Street if she hadn't met Orson in her past? It could even be suggested that this is some kind of grandfather paradox. I believe one can't exist without the other, and therefore both Orson's existence and the conclusion of Series 9 are simultaneously true. Also, it's to be noted that even Stephen Moffat has a theory on how Orson Pink came into existence now that Danny and Clara are dead. I don't believe that it's definitely canon that they are not Orson's ancestors. Clara took possession of the Dan the Soldier Man heirloom after Danny's death. Whether this was from his fabled extended family, his friends, or Clara effectively being next of kin due to their intimate relationship is up for debate. The toy soldier's journey, therefore, is as follows. Clara finds and gives the toy to child Rupert, Danny, as depicted in the episode Listen. Danny keeps the toy his whole life until his death, in which Clara takes ownership of it once more. The toy is passed down through Danny and Clara's descendants until it ultimately reaches Orson. Orson gives Clara the toy, as we see in Listen. When the latter states it is a family heirloom, the former confirms it to be so, but still hands it to her. Clara leaves the toy soldier, now at least hundreds of years old, with the Doctor when they were a child. Quite a long way round journey for a broken plastic army soldier. The vision that the 12th Doctor sees of Clara shortly before his regeneration in the episode Twice Upon a Time, when he gets his memories of her back, is Clara's testament, delivered to the Doctor via Bill's kiss. She resembles to the Doctor a combination of her final self and how he remembers seeing her last in his then current incarnation. After all, he didn't see Bill's testimony as having a massive hole through her. My story allows for the testament of Clara to exist. Also, her hair was not the same length or style as it was during her death on Trap Street, but weird identities. Doubly also it is to be noted that in the vision the Doctor has of Clara in the episode Heaven Sent, she looks exactly as she did when she died. But in Twice Upon a Time she is different. It is to be triply also noted that the 12th Doctor also had a real hard time if knowing if Clara looked young or old, as referenced towards the end of the episode Last Christmas. To him, she just looks like Clara Oswald, and will not look any different. The real-world explanation is the cameo in Twice Upon a Time was filmed 2 years after the conclusion of Series 9. See Back to the Future Parts 1 and 2, and check out the length of Marty's hair. That always bugged me since I was a kid. Clara and me, / Ashildr's Tardis, will be referring to me as Ashildr going forward, saving any confusion, but as evidenced in the show, she prefers being called me. And the American diner we see in the episode The Impossible Astronaut are not the same. This is evidenced by the fact that in the aforementioned episode, the Doctor enters the diner's main area via a door that should lead to Clara Ashildr's or Clotilda's going forward TARDIS control room, and his TARDIS is clearly visible in the background. The whole area in this episode is canonically the guy/boys restroom of a real diner. There's a man working behind the bar in the aforementioned episode, and he's wearing casual clothes and an apron and not any kind of themed uniform as Clara seemingly wore. Plus, if this was Clotilda's TARDIS, why would someone be working there? Did Clara and Ashildr hire someone to serve people as though they were an actual diner? Is he on the payroll? Does their TARDIS have the facility to make lemonade? Maybe we'll get into this in the story. Thirdly, The Impossible Astronaut takes place in Utah, whilst the episode Hellbent takes place in Nevada. Yes, these states are right next to each other, and the location in question is right on the border Nevada side. 12's line of, "This diner never used to be here. It used to be over the other side of the hill," or words to that effect, leads me to believe that they are not the same location. He's already in a state of confusion to begin with. More will be explained in my writing, especially towards the end of part 1. Okay, pointers out the way, onto the complete, comprehensive fate of Clara. And as we said, spoilers.
Two girls, the impossible and the immortal, were once moments away from their separate finales. Now they find themselves together with a little more extra time.
And space.
events of the episodes Face the Raven, Heaven Sent and Hellbent occur without the latter's diner scenes at this point, up until the moment in which the Doctor's memories of Clara are removed in the recently stolen TARDIS.
Clara and Ashildr return to Earth. They attempt to land near the Doctor's TARDIS. Not being that competent in flying theirs at this moment in time, no pun intended, they end up in Nevada. Also, Clara tries to get as close to her death date as possible, but arrives 2 months and 9 hours late, making it around 22:45 hours GMT or 14:45 PDT/PST locally in Nevada. Clarild's TARDIS's chameleon circuit disguises the ship as a cactus.
I was originally thinking outcrop or something deserty. Let's go with cactus.
They debate whether to leave and materialise in London, but Clara ultimately decides they should leave the Doctor where they find themselves, lest he wake up any moment from his memory wipe, which could lead to negative, unknown and/or potentially dangerous repercussions if such a thing occurred. Finding themselves where they've landed, the middle of a desert, they walk for a short distance carrying the Doctor and find a road. They lay the now stirring Doctor on the ground as comfortably as they can and flag down a passing vehicle. They leave the Doctor with the man who was driving, hoping him to be trustworthy. He seems it. Clara asks of him,
Take care of him. He may be sad when he wakes up.
Not necessary to the plot, but maybe for payment they give the man the Doctor's sonic glasses and or the expired human-compatible neuroblock. Exotic alien tech in Nevada must be worth a fortune. Whatever the case, we do know that the Doctor got his sonic glasses back as he had them in Clarild's TARDIS diner and had no chance to get a new pair from the TARDIS. As another point of interest, the guitar that the Doctor noodles on in Clarild's diner TARDIS is not the same as that which he played in previous episodes, backed up by the fact that at this point in the story, the Doctor's TARDIS was still in London. The Doctor must have acquired this guitar during his Nevada wandering in search of the mysterious Clara and his TARDIS. Priorities, right?
preparing to leave the Doctor behind. Taking one final look, Clara emotionally says her goodbyes and cries in the process. She and Ashildr walk back to their TARDIS after thanking the man. Ashildr asks Clara if she is okay, to which the latter bravely replies that she is. She wipes her eyes, but realises that the tears she was recently crying are dried up. Taking their TARDIS, they discuss the fact that they need to acquire the Doctor's and attempt to bring it to him. Even though she's had some experience with controlling a TARDIS, Clara is effectively learning as she goes along. She has had difficulty dematerialising due to the console's classic layout, and hence why they flew in the first place. Therefore, keeping with the flying for the time being, they head east into Utah. Below, they see settlements, towns, and, also briefly, an isolated diner. Clara quips that they need to get the hang of their TARDIS's dematerialising controls quickly, before they become
UFO sighting of a flying cactus.
Eventually, after much fumbling about, and Ashildr giving the manual a quick skim, they do dematerialise and continue on their way to London. Clara, realising their classic TARDIS layout does have a telepathic interface, uses her recent memories and tries to land near where the Doctor's TARDIS is located, both in space and time.
I will reveal the location momentarily.
However, they end up closer to the trap street instead, as it is prominently on Clara's mind. The TARDIS materialises in an alleyway. Its chameleon circuit disguises it as a dumpster.
Initially, I was thinking of a traditional telephone box, but went with a dumpster for an attempt at comedic effect. Not sure how its doors would open up if it was a top-lifting dumpster. Maybe the gravity changes between the threshold of the exterior dumpster lid and the TARDIS's interior doors, which themselves could change to match the exterior. But I digress.
Clara looks outside via the TARDIS's exterior camera screen and, looking at a map screen, can tell that they are not near the Doctor's TARDIS but rather closer to Trap Street. She realises that she was distracted and preoccupied with thoughts of it. Looking at the controls, she knows that they are roughly at the time of her death, but can't be too sure if they have arrived before or after. Ashildr volunteers to go out and find the Doctor's TARDIS, as she undoubtedly has a clearer mind. Also, her reasoning includes the assurance that Clara wouldn't run into her younger self by accident if they have arrived before her death. Clara gives her a rough indication of where she believes the Doctor's TARDIS is in relation to their current location, an estate to the north of where they currently are.
I'm going with buildings right on the border between Haggerston and Shoreditch as the real-world location.
Ashildr asks what the Doctor's TARDIS looks like. Clara replies with fondness,
A blue police box.
To the best of my knowledge, and rewatching the episodes The Girl Who Died / The Woman Who Lived, Ashildr never saw the Doctor's TARDIS. He, on both occasions, parked it far away from the action. Also, if she had seen it, she probably would have forgotten due to her multi-billion-year existence.
Clara then questions if the running into your younger self logic also applies to Ashildr herself, to which the latter cryptically replies that there are two scenarios in play.
1, we're before your death, so therefore I'm safely in the refuge. Or 2, it's after, and I'm most likely far away from here by now.
Clara is taken aback by the vague words as Ashildr leaves while saying she
Won't be long.
Alone, Clara stands for a while before going to the TARDIS's doors and opening one up slightly. Looking through the gap, she sees Ashildr just leaving the threshold of the alleyway and the busyness of the city making its way past. She closes the door and sits on the floor, resting up against the recently closed. She wonders what Ashildr meant by being most likely far away from here after her death. Ashildr, at the beginning of her police box acquiring quest, walks past Trap Street and takes a moment to reminisce about the place without entering. After recollections with mixed feelings, she continues in her search.
I've decided to place the location of Trap Street off Redchurch Street in Shoreditch, London. This seems to be one of the locations pinpointed on the map printout in the episode Face the Raven. The real-world counterpart street is also one way, at least on its western end, and the main street in Face the Raven is also one way.
After waiting for a while and no sign of Ashildr returning, Clara starts to become both worried and slightly suspicious. She opens up the door to her TARDIS once more. This time, however, she ventures out into the alleyway, cautiously. She reaches the threshold of where the alleyway meets the main road and looks around at all the activity. She looks roughly to the area where Trap Street is located, about the 2 o'clock position from the alleyway's threshold, noting that her attention and gaze want to actively but fleetingly stray from the area due to the misdirection circuit.
To my understanding, a misdirection circuit and a perception filter are two separate entities in the Whoniverse, which perform similar functions. The misdirection circuit of Trap Street, according to the episode itself, was created by lurkworms which live in the street lamps of the said location. They emit telepathic frequencies to obscure the minds of passers-by and disguise the street's inhabitants to make everything seem normal. However, someone actively looking for the street and / or previously aware of its existence could use the said telepathy frequencies against themselves to know when they were close to the source, as we see in Face the Raven when the Doctor, Clara and Rigsy are actively searching for the Trap Street and using techniques such as counting steps. A perception filter, on the other hand, is a technology most likely Time Lord in nature, as the TARDIS utilised such tech as seen in The Sound of Drums, which affects observers and causes them to actively not notice the subject the technology is passively filtering. Maybe this method of cloaking, along with the already previously mentioned misdirection circuit, will show up later on in my story. Stay tuned.
Clara looks across the road and at how close Trap Street is to where she now finds herself, roughly 40 or 50 yards. She chuckles while noting another mental observation. She went into Trap Street, faced the Raven, was extracted at the end of her time stream, ended up on Gallifrey at the end of the universe's life, escaped in a stolen Tardis, accidentally ended up in Nevada, and now found herself across the street from where she first started. She quips to herself,
God, talk about going the long way round.
I know that this is a Moffat motif or Moffatism, but Clara did quip long way round it is in the episode Flatline, so maybe this was a phrase in her mind. To my knowledge, she has only heard the Doctor use the phrase once in common parlance in the episode The Bells of St. John.
She walks back into the alleyway and back to her TARDIS in an attempt to stave off the boredom of waiting for Ashildr to return. Some time passes and she idles back to the threshold once more. Looking out into the main road, she sees something she vehemently didn't want to. On the pavement on the opposite side, she catches sight of the Doctor, Rigsy, and her very, very slightly younger self, who has just met up with the previous two after running down the road a little with Rigsy's phone in her hand. She sees the said device drop and their gradual combined group realisation that they are standing right outside the Trap Street. Watching from the alleyway, tears start to form in Clara's eyes. She has a strong urge to run across the street and to stop the trio from going into the alien refuge, or to generally change the flow of the trio's story in some way. Not to rescue herself from her own fate, however, but to negate the Doctor's upcoming ordeal, so he doesn't have to make the personal 4.5 billion year sacrifice. With fondness, and realising that this may be the very final time that she'd see the Doctor, in his velvet, doctory jacket no less, she watches with continuing tears until he, Rigsy, and her past self are all well within Trap Street, making their way through the narrow opening. She walks away from the threshold and back into her TARDIS, despondent with the futility of it all. After some time, Ashildr finally returns. She enters their TARDIS, talking, but comes to find Clara initially absent. Down some corridors, she finds the Impossible Girl sitting on the floor, resting against the wall, looking at photos on her phone of her adventures with the Doctor. She is still crying. Ashildr goes to sit with her. After a brief silence, Clara, forcing an expression change, laughs and passes her phone to Ashildr.
Here, watch this.
Ashildr takes the phone and Clara touches the screen to play the queued up video. The corridor is filled with the sound of the Benny Hill theme, accompanied with the sound of panicking Maya, yelling in fear.
Obviously, it's the humiliating day-winning video from the girl who died.
Ashildr laughs, commenting that she somewhat recognises the place and some of the people that can be seen in the video. Clara nods with some sorrow, feeling a little saddened by Ashildr's loss of key memories. The Immortal has forgotten that she was in fact somewhat responsible for the contents of the video in the first place. Clara points out to her,
That was you. You won that day.
As Ashildr continues watching and laughing, she sees, out the corner of her eye, Clara discreetly checking her pulse. Ashildr is drawn away from the clip and frowns in sympathy to her. She points out to Clara that her vitals must start again soon, logically because it is a miracle that she's even still functioning. Clara remains silent, her fingers still try to find a pulse. She stares into space before quietly muttering,
I was a teacher. But there's one thing I never learned myself. We were before the Maya in their ship, and I was acting all doctory, do you remember?
Ashildr shakes her head.
I never learned that I'm not the Doctor.
I know her character arc was ultimately becoming a Doctor, but my point here was that she wasn't the Doctor.
Ashildr hands Clara her phone back and reminds her of what the Doctor detailed to her before he passed out. The rules on how to be a good Doctor. She also reminds Clara that the Doctor wanted her to
Smile for him.
Clara's expression does not change. More silence follows before it is broken by Ashildr, once again apologising for her death on Trap Street. Clara asks Ashildr if she saw it happen. The immortal replies that she didn't. The latter then gets the impression that the former wants to ask more questions, but is hesitant in doing so. During a new bout of silence, Ashildr draws the conversation in another direction. She states that she believes to have found the Doctor's Tardis, as it had Police Public Call Box written upon its 4 top edges, and asks about a
St. John's ambulance emblem on the door.
As Ashildr continues describing what she found, Clara starts to smile, and it gradually grows in strength slightly. Ashildr finishes by stating that she tried to open the door, but ultimately couldn't. Clara asks where the Doctor's Tardis is, and if there were
Many people about.
Ashildr replies that there were, and that she was getting some funny looks from them. Clara stands up, still forlorn, and makes her way to the console room. She has a job to do, and is determined to power through and get the said job over with as quickly as possible. She tells Ashildr that they will go retrieve the ship at night to attract less attention. Clara flips some controls of their own TARDIS's console as Ashildr uses the telepathic interface to get them to their destination for retrieval. In the very early hours of the morning, and with Monday turning into Tuesday, there are very few people about. Clorilda's TARDIS is ready to materialise. Clara tries her best to accurately materialise around the Doctor's. She fails a few times, causing horrible and
Not good.
sounds. Eventually, with Ashildr's assistance in flipping and holding certain controls, their TARDIS starts materialising around the Doctor's, disguising itself as a small brick electrical substation, suitably in keeping with the nearby apartment buildings on the estate, as there are other substations sporadically littered around the area. Inside the console room, Clara and Ashildr watch the Doctor's TARDIS start to fade into view. With waves of changing opacity, Clara genuinely smiles and all eventually comes to a rest. Ashildr tries to drum up some more joy in Clara by awkwardly letting out a little cheer and clap. Clara leaves the console and visibly checks the integrity of the Doctor's TARDIS to make sure all is okay. When she gets to the front, however, she immediately stops and stares in awe. Ashildr looks at the frozen still Clara and inquires if everything is
Okay.
Moving over to be by her side, she also sees what the impossible girl does. The whole front of the Doctor's TARDIS has been decorated with graffitied, colourful flowers. The penultimate bottom right panel also bears a monochrome rendering of Clara herself. Ashildr is just as speechless as the depicted and points out that when she found it, it wasn't decorated in such a way. Clara can only say a single word, rather a single name.
Rixie.
Ashildr inquires as to what that word means, which irritates Clara. She simply replies, whilst going through the door of the Doctor's TARDIS, that Rixie was the one she gave her life for. Clara, obviously miffed, enters the console room of the Doctor's TARDIS, and it springs to life with light and sound. At the same time, Ashildr tries to apologise to Clara, and also tries to explain that it has been a very long time for her to remember details and names. It is, however, futile. Ultimately, the despondent girl is not listening. The door is left ajar, but the immortal doesn't step into the Doctor's TARDIS, but rather waits at the door, unsure of how to proceed with the ongoing situation when concerning Clara's growing isolation. Walking across the short walkway between the door and the central console, Clara notices that on its dexter side, on top of the telepathic interface, is the Doctor's burgundy velvet jacket. Clara smiles gently as she sees it, remembering her comments about it a few hours or so ago, from her perspective, in the cloisters of Gallifrey.
Now, how did the Doctor's jacket get back into his TARDIS as we saw at the end of the episode Hell Bent? How did it travel from Gallifrey from the very end of the universe to 2015 Earth? Much like the Skywalker lightsaber in Star Wars The Force Awakens, it's a story for another time, meaning it will most likely never be answered. There is a second completely identical jacket in the doctor's confession dial, which was drying next to the fireplace along with the previous copy doctor's clothes. So that's at least two sources of where the exact velvet jacket could come from. My personal opinion is that it's a plot hole that Moffat hoped nobody would notice. Any future interactions after Hellbent which resulted in the Doctor or whomever relocating the jacket from his Gallifreyan childhood home or confession dial to the TARDIS cannot be ruled out. Nor can the idea that the TARDIS itself retrieved one of the two existing jackets. However, the jacket being present works thematically for the ending of Hellbent, so I believe that is why the plot hole exists in the first place.
Clara places her hand on the jacket and takes a moment of reflection.
Obviously, she would have no idea of how the coat had ended back on the TARDIS and the journey it had been on.
After, she goes to the right walkways and down to her bedroom to collect a few belongings she has on the TARDIS. A hold-all bag with a few essentials and clothes, including her black leather jacket and the jumper she was wearing at the very beginning of her last day with the Doctor.
At the beginning of Flatline, Clara makes a point about not leaving items in the TARDIS to honour Danny's wishes, despite the Doctor's insistence that they have acres of room available. I believe she'd still honour this after his death. That and the fact that she has an apartment in the fictional Coal Hill, Shoreditch. Actually not too far from where Clarilla's TARDIS currently is.
Back on deck in the console room, with her hold-all on her left shoulder, Clara takes a moment to take in the sight of the great time and relative dimension in space one last time. Looking to her left, she notices that Ashildr has stepped foot into the ship, but is waiting patiently at the door, with a sympathetic smile. Struck with an idea, Clara grabs the Doctor's velvet jacket and walks up the stairs located at the back. To the right, she puts it on the freestanding coat stand located close to the railings. This, however, is not the main reason for her ascending the stairs. To her left is the chalkboard. It is blank, and a previously used chalk stick rests in the bottom groove. She smiles with building tears as she knows exactly what phrase to write, in big block letters in the relative centre of the board.
Run, you clever boy.
She takes a moment and continues below.
And be a doctor.
Placing the chalk back, she moves the board to be positioned right in front of the stairs and backs down the aforementioned while looking at her parting presentation for the Doctor. She turns and, standing on the main deck, places her hand on the TARDIS console for the final time and looks up at the columned time rotor and Gallifreyan-adorned discs at the top. She smiles and remembers the last words the Doctor had said to her and the words she'd said to the Doctor before that in the cloisters.
We may never know what she said, and that's a good thing.
After a final brief moment of contemplation, she says her last goodbye to the Doctor's TARDIS.
I know we had our differences, but thank you for everything. And take care of him for me. He may be sad.
With an affectionate pat, she leaves the console and makes for the door. Ashildr smiles sympathetically again at Clara as their eyes meet. The latter smiles back. Ashildr leaves the door's threshold for Clara to turn there and take one last look at her previous second home and remember the adventures she had, thanks to her, the ship's abilities. She leaves the Doctor's TARDIS for the final time and slowly closes the door. Clara lies on her side, on a simple bed within Clarill's TARDIS. She is depressed. She practically went into the bowels of the ship and found the first bedroom-looking room she could and made it hers. She has been doing nothing but ruminating and has not said a word to Ashildr in such a long time. In between the bouts of pondering and self-loathing, she has been getting distracted by the absence of her heartbeat. In days gone by, she would have noticed when lying in bed the crunching sound of her ear physically pressing against the pillow and back due to her heartbeat. That, coupled with the gentle rock of her body she'd sometimes feel as her pulse unwaveringly continued without conscious thought. Now, she noted, there was nothing. Even with her left hand under her left ear, there was no rumble of a torrent of blood. She could only hear the distant ambience of her Tardis. Now and then, however, she would hear booted footsteps approaching, which would halt at the bedroom's threshold before receding away like very irregular sea waves. They happened to approach again as Clara was in her fortified state. However, this time, they seemingly stopped closer than they had done before. Ashildr, being cautious, asks Clara how she's feeling, to which the latter gives no answer. She approaches the bed softly. Clara can feel her feet sink left slightly as her immortal companion sits upon the mattress end. Ashildr points out to her that if she'd rather be alone, then let her know, before casually mentioning that they need to get the doctor's Tardis back to him at some point. She still gets no answer from Clara. She looks at the impossible girl's face and sees that she looks cried out, though her eyes are tearless and looking quite normal. Ashildr places a comforting hand on Clara's right sneakered foot before trying to humorously quip that she shouldn't wear shoes in bed, trying to elicit some kind of response from her. Clara, however, still stays silent, not even moving her eyes in the immortal's direction, let alone her head. She does, though, as her sympathetic companion stays with her, eventually speak.
4.5 billion years. He did what he did for 4.5 billion years. And I'm going to betray him of that because the universe requires me to do so.
Ashildr, being somewhat responsible for the doctor being sent to the confession dial in the first place, states that she wishes she could undo everything. She adamantly states that she wishes she'd never made such a deal with the Time Lords. Clara very weakly chuckles and quips that they're both guilty of not having foresight. Ashildr removes her hand from Clara's foot before starting to rise up off the bed. Clara, though, quickly moves and grabs Ashildr's left arm by the jacket, surprising the immortal, prompting her not to leave and to resume being present. The latter places her comforting hand on the former's right foreleg. After a long passage of time, Ashildr eventually speaks up.
Clara,
She says softly.
I have a plan.
Clara closes her eyes and braces herself for what's to come. She has no idea what the next words will be. The immortal girl chirpily suggests that they should get some food. After a stint of silence, Ashildr continues with a slight laugh, explaining that she's starving and that both of them
Should get out the TARDIS and get some food.
She also points out that
There's a whole time and space range to choose from.
for the first time in a long time, due to confusion, Clara sits up. Ashildr further explains that she didn't want to disturb her during her lamenting, but she has no idea how to fly their TARDIS. Otherwise, she would have gotten some food herself and some for Clara if she wanted some. The latter, now feeling a little ashamed, asks how long she's been lying down for, and the answer she receives from Ashildr shocks her.
Just over a day.
With lethargy, Clara rises up more, which causes Ashildr to spring into action and make sure she doesn't fall or suffer any ill side effects. Her hands go up to her forearms, attempting to steady her. It comes to the immortal's mind, however, that the impossible girl would be, and was perfectly fine, due to her unique, time-breaking condition. She asks Clara if she has slept at all. She says she hasn't, to her recollection. Ashildr then asks her if she's hungry. She says she feels no different than she did on Trap Street. Clara begins to question if she can actually eat, due to her unique condition. She questions if the physical process of food entering her stomach could still happen, as every other day-to-day normal bodily function
I'm sure you know what I'm getting at.
is absent from her existence. Ashildr, after taking a moment and thinking about how to formulate her question, asks Clara if she feels as though she can. The latter confirms that she does feel as such. Removing her hands from her forearms, Ashildr tells her that
It could be a fun experiment or test.
for her to undertake to see what would happen. She continues and details out a rudimentary plan.
We go get food and after drop the doctor's Tardis off. Sound like a plan?
Clara is dubious as to the realistic function of her eating, but ultimately agrees. She even offers to pay for it on one of her credit cards. It's not like she'll have to pay the balance off. And, as a means of saying sorry to Ashildr
For moping around.
neglecting their normally functioning needs and effectively keeping her trapped on a supplyless Tardis for over a day, she suggests they
Go to a fancy London restaurant.
Thank you so much for watching part 1 AA. Part 1 was just going to be A and B, but it's just too long. I've written too much. So part 1A is going to be AA, AB, AC, AD. And then part 1B is going to be BA, BB, blah, 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 blah. So again, thank you so much for watching, and this story will continue. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below, and I will answer them maybe in an AQA that could take place after the next video. So thank you very much, and thank you, thank you, thank you.
It's the doctor. Get me Kate Stewart on the phone. The one with the eyebrows. I don't care what time it is over there. The sun is only just setting here. I'm over the pond. This is an emergency, and time has nothing on me.
Yes, Doctor, what is happening?
Kate Stewart, I've been suitably informed that you're at home. Yeah, well, never mind that. I need unit to look for and deliver my TARDIS to me if they find it.
Find your TARDIS. Where are you?
Nevada, United States.
And where did you... What's happened exactly?
I'm a bit hazy on recent events from my perspective, but I leave a housing estate in London, north of the river. It's where I parked her last. As I say, a bit hazy.
An estate north of the Thames. That's where you want us to search.
I'll search here, follow my intuition, wherever the road takes me in Marty. See if she's calling out. I've got a man called Marty helping me get around, helping me search for her.
Can you trust him?
He seems trustworthy. I'll be in touch in the morning. My morning.
Is Clara not with you?
Clara? No, just Marty with me. But he said that name to... Look! Who is Clara?